Well, let's continue with this discussion with Mr. Willem Els, who's a senior training coordinator on terrorism at the Institute for Security Studies, as we continue to look at the legacy as well as work of the outgoing national head of the Hawks, Lt.General Godfrey Lebeya, marking, of course, his final day in office early today. Willem, Meneer Els, it's great to have you with us as always. Welcome. So let's get right on to some major reflection of Lieutenant General Lebeya's tenure. You've heard him with the DPCI, having made a whopping 17,136 arrests of suspects, securing 4,677 convictions just among some of his bragging rights during his tenure is quite remarkable.
Yeah, good afternoon, Alicia. Indeed, it is remarkable. You know, what a man. And what he also mentioned, you know, he started off in 1984 as a policeman. Then he came up through the ranks, gained his experience, but also he went into academic studies, qualified himself as an advocate of law. And then what is more important, I think why he could really lead so well in this organized crime environment. You know, he did his master's on vehicle theft in SABC, and he did his PhD in organized crime in the area. So he was academically, he was extremely well qualified, both as a
absolutely. Also, yes, Willem, go ahead.
Yeah, he was not only an experienced policeman, but he was also an academic. He managed to marry the two, and that provided not only a very good commander or management, but he actually provided leadership to his people.
Absolutely, because we don't see quite a lot of self-improving when it comes to some of these institutions. You know, a lot of people and leaders in particular, Willem, will become very complacent. So it's quite commendable that he took it upon himself to upskill himself and just get better knowledge as well as skills around the industry that he was operating in. Let's now look at his stance against corruption, Willem, because where many others have failed to be objective and impartial on such high-profile cases, often embroiled in allegations of colluding or even protecting certain affiliates from prosecution, he will certainly be remembered as a decisive and effective leader, especially in a country with failing crime institutions and a lack of public trust in those institutions.
Yeah, you know, especially corruption, he was always a stalwart against it. He was always outspoken, but also he was not only talking about it, he was very decisive in acting against it, acting against his own people when he identified it, but also arresting some other police officials that were guilty of that made themselves guilty of corruption. So he really was a stalwart when it comes to that. You know, and you speak about the arrests of these people. You know, that doesn't sound like a lot, but we must remember that the Hawks only came in for the most serious cases. So those cases were the most difficult and the most serious cases where they do the arrest, and to achieve that conviction rate, you know, it is not really reflected in the police statistics, because if you look at the police statistics, your conviction rate on robberies is about 10% of all robberies that are being committed, and you can see that they are way above that threshold. And that is just a clear, an indication of his leadership and how he led from the front.
You know, when you speak about these serious cases, Willem, interesting that Lebeya would actually deliver a notable turnaround in the priority crimes unit after he himself, according to the NPA's Shabile Batoy, there was in fact one of the first casualties of state capture. And looking ahead, Willem, who is then most suited, in your view, to take over the baton at this institution, and what would be their key priorities? We're still shrouded with unanswered questions on the so-called state capture arrests, which Batohi herself has maintained they are a bit of a thorn to the NPA side, as they cannot get the necessary proof to detain all those that were accused.
Yeah, you know, that's a very difficult question to answer because it's such big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, as he mentioned, you know, he surrounded himself with a wealth of experience, with a wealth of commanders and leaders that are really has got integrity, that are leading from the front with him. He was he had a very tight knit leadership around him. He was not a lone ranger. He worked in a team, and as I said, there are many people within that the Hawks that can also take over the baton from him. So it's difficult to speculate. There are certain quite good leaders. What we would obviously would like to see is that the person that is appointed is also a leader, not just a manager, but also that person has got some good experience in a background in fighting crime, investigating crime. That is nothing new for him, because the general came in, he was a seasoned detective, and then he started to lead from the front. He could fall back on his police experience, but also, as I mentioned, on his academic knowledge.
Absolutely. And in closing, Willem, I mean, moving forward for the Hawks, I mean, obviously, you and I always talk about the ever-rising crime statistics in this country. So maybe calls for reviews into maybe even bigger, of course, collaboration between the Hawks and all law enforcement agencies. I mean, how would they even go this route to ensure successful convictions of offenders? I mean, we're talking about GBV victims this week who actually died as a result of re-offending offenders.
In the first place, the Hawks and the police, they also suffer from a lack of resources, lack of manpower, lack of training. So I think that is where they have to start. They have to look at the budget. They have to see the allocation to our priority crimes. Is it sufficient? If not, we should see that it is. We should supply them with the other resources that they need, and also especially the technical and the more technical stuff like electronics. Your data need to be dealt with and everything. Crime did not stand still in the analog time. It went on and digitized and everything, and we are falling behind. So what we should see within the Hawks is that they look at investment in their people, training them, but also looking at upskilling the officers and officials that are already there in order to prepare them very well for what is following.
Willem, it's always great talking to you. Thank you so much for that input. That is Senior Training Coordinator at ISS, Mr. Willem Els, there, also reflecting on the leadership of Hawks head Lt.Gen. General Godfrey Lebeya, who today vacates his office after 7 years at the helm of that institution.